Steve Moran here, and I'm actually so excited today. I've got to tell you, this doesn't exactly have anything to do with our conversation that we're going to get into in a minute with my good friend John Gonzales, but we have Argentum next week. Come hang out with us. We've got some senior living Foresight swag that we're giving away. Limited supplies on most of it. The one thing we do have that I don't think we'll give away all of it because I think people won't have enough courage. But as you know, John, in fact, I think I've got it here. Where was it? Oh man, I'm having terrible camera troubles. So wait a minute. That's keeping it alive and keeping them real. I use a counter to keep track of how many people I talk to. Oh, there goes my camera again. This is terrible. Wait, here we go. Camera, we're back. I've got these counters to keep track of the number of people you talk to. We've got a bunch of those. We've got some shirts, some mugs, all sorts of really cool stuff. So I hope you come find us. We'll be doing lots of video and looking forward to great conversations. And so with that, I'm going to steal in your time here, John. But I'm talking to my good friend, John Gonzales. We have known each other since the very early days of Senior Living Foresight when it was Senior Housing Forum. He was one of my first early guest contributors. I will say that he wrote an article early on that got me in more trouble than just about anything that we've ever published. This was in the Emeritus scandal thing, and But it was the thing that really pushed John on the map in senior living because we were the ones who had the courage to say, maybe we ought to see what lessons are here for us. So I can hardly wait to dig into what you're doing and what you're thinking about staff retention and hiring. But first, let's start with our intro. Hey guys, Steve Moran here. And I want to start with just some big kudos to Connected Living for being the sponsor for Foresight TV and making this happen. They will be at Argentum, and so check them out. So John, let's talk a little bit about who you are and what you do.
I'm a guest contributor to Senior Living Foresight, first and foremost, Steve.
Yeah, we need some arguments from you. It's been a while, you know.
Yeah, I'm on it. Thanks for having me. I've been in this space for 35 years, which is I think qualifies as a veteran. But I'm currently the Senior Vice President for Consulting and Managed Services for Haven Senior Investments. I'm also president of Haven Senior Living. We're an asset management and consulting branch of the company, and we basically serve owners and operators by solving their problems. So it's great to be with a company with so much integrity and ethics, and that's actually something we'll talk about in a little bit.
Great. So let's dig right into it. I think that we had this first wave of COVID. It was so hard. I mean, we had resident deaths, we had employee deaths, we had PPE shortages. I mean, it was just terrible. But at that point, we had some hope, and the hope was that a vaccine was going to come. Vaccine did come, and now we're seeing terrible numbers. We're seeing staffing is perhaps worse than it's ever been any time in the COVID, worse than it's ever been in the time of the industry. And yet you're kind of an optimism about the idea that there are things we can do about this to take care of our residents and have great teams. And so let's just sort of talk maybe a little bit about company philosophy to start with.
Sure, absolutely. I think the first thing as an industry we need to do is really acknowledge the problem and understand it. So there's a shortage of employees. It's across the spectrum of business. So you can't drive down the street without seeing help wanted and now hiring signs everywhere. So it affects everybody. But in our business in particular, one of the things we've relied on heavily are the low wage frontline employees. And that's a model that's been almost universal in senior housing. It's not just assisted and memory care. It's also in the skilled care environments, and so we're really getting pushed to make some sea changes, or at least I think it's worth the conversation to talk about how these frontline employees are compensated. I wrote an article for you back in 2013. I had to do some research, but it was called Rethinking Profit Margins. And I'm not prescient, but I'm an amateur futurist, and I could see the writing on the wall coming. And we built on the backs of these frontline employees this tremendous, awesome thing, this industry, the environments that we create. But at some point, there's a reckoning. And right now, what's happened post-pandemic, because of the expanded unemployment benefits, I just read an article yesterday that the government's going to be increasing SNAP benefits by 25%. And during the course of the pandemic, a lot of staff had to get creative. They downsized, they consolidated lifestyles, moved in with family members, that kind of thing. So even now that we're seeing the industry start to rebound a little bit, occupancy start to rebound a little bit from our lows, the business is coming back, but the employees aren't. And it's not just us; it's all over the place, right? So with the rising cost of living, inflation, although we're all expecting and hoping that it starts to slow down and tamper, it's still a big factor, particularly in the lives of our frontline employees. So they have to go through the analysis of, why do I want to work here? What is it about this place that is tempting me away from $16 an hour at Walmart? What are those intangible and tangible benefits that we can offer to employees in order to be, the word I like to use is sexy. So as an industry, how can we become more sexy? And I think that's a real key. The other key, and we can talk about this in a bit, but we need to understand the new generation of workers that are coming up in senior living. So I'm on the other side, right? I used to say I'm waiting for the silver tsunami, but then I realized I'm actually riding on it. But it's interesting because as this generation comes up the ranks, and by the way, Gen Xers, millennials, I'm sorry, yeah, Gen Zs and millennials make up about 46% of the workforce right now, 46% of the full-time workforce. So understanding what they're looking for is paramount. And having kind of worked with these folks, for a number of years, I'm starting to really understand it. Plus, I have kids about that same age, and I understand what they're looking for.
So I think there's a collision of, there's sort of two things that I'm seeing that I find worth talking about, thinking about. So the first is a couple days ago, Sacramento is where I live, state capital of California. Probably likely a lot of people know that, had an article where they're saying that we might see a $20 minimum wage here in California by next year. And this is really problematic, because I wrote an article a couple of years ago where I asked, I suggested we should have a $25 minimum wage pay for senior living. And because people were kind to me, I had a number of significant executives reach out to me privately saying, "You're crazy. If we did that, we would be broke." And just recently I talked to somebody who's got a single site, but he sort of walked me through the numbers, and he said, "Look, I'd go upside down $6,000 or $8,000 a month if I paid even $20 an hour in some California building." So I worry a lot about what that's going to look like, and yet we see employers. If you're McDonald's, right? It's not necessarily much fun, but you raise a hamburger price by 25 cents or 50 cents. An item, and you sort of got that covered. But for senior living, you're talking about probably $200-300 a resident per month, and that has a huge impact. And so I guess the second question, so I think there are really two big questions I have. Are there ways to make senior living more attractive to frontline workers so they're going to love coming to work every day? Something I spend a lot of time talking about. And then the other question I have is are there ways to be more efficient so maybe we don't need so many people?
Yeah, it's interesting, Steve. You and I spoke a few days ago or a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about just this, and what is it that we can do as an industry to be more attractive? What is it that we can do to retain employees? And there's a lot. I think understanding the folks that are looking for jobs, and those that are looking for jobs, be the most attractive option for them. What I'm seeing right now, and this is unfortunate, is that operators are getting into a position where they're doing the wrong things in order to adjust to this labor shortage. They're tolerating bad behaviors. They don't want to deal with those types of issues because they're concerned that an employee is going to walk out on them, and they're going to be worse than they were before. They're throwing money at the problem, which by itself isn't going to work. In conjunction with some other strategies, I think that is an integral part of it. And going back to what you were saying about the, just raising resident rents in order to adjust for that isn't going to work. And here's why. Here's why I say that. The fastest growing portion of seniors is the middle market. So we all know that the demographics show that the senior population is going to expand pretty dramatically in the coming years. But the segment that's got the highest percentage of growth is in that middle market. And if we're catering to that upper income, very high level finish levels, it's maybe more tolerable to be able to implement those rate increases to offset labor. But for the majority of operators, that's cost prohibitive. And so, to your point, yes, there are things such as the technology is so accessible now. Making sure that your staffing schedules are flexible, you're getting the optimal productivity out of your staff, integrating that accessible technology in the form of fall detection sensors. There's passive motion sensors. We're stopping short at this point of the robo caregiver, which I think I wrote an article for you about that a few years ago. But yeah, I mean, that technology is starting to make its way into our business, and that is not a bad thing. I think a lot of folks steer away from high tech, thinking that we can't replace high touch with high tech. But there is a synergy between the two, and it makes caregivers' lives easier. And it does require a small investment depending on the technology you're looking for, but it's a foregone conclusion. And I think as an industry, we've got to come to grips that people keep saying, when is it going to go back to normal? It's not. This is the new normal. We need to adjust to it as opposed to trying to drag, the new generation in. And I've seen us do this before as an industry. I think with the advent of technology, we were very slow to embrace it. And now, those that had embraced it and that had gotten out on the forefront are doing much better. Those that haven't have had to pivot quickly to wrestle with, how do we give a virtual tour? How do we, manage delivery of services when we're short of staff all the time? And so the integration of technology has really become almost a necessity. And operators who have not embraced that need to start opening their minds to that. But wages, back to wages, I think our industry, like to your point, we really need to rethink how we compensate these frontline employees, not just in terms of money, but benefits, those perks. I read somewhere someone's putting massage chairs in the employee break rooms. But I think we need to get even more creative. What a daycare for our frontline employees, it may be on site, or a meal program that allows them after they've worked their shift to take meals home for their family so they don't have to worry about going home and cooking. But I think we're going to have to get very creative and very aggressive at making our environments more attractive to the workforce.
Yeah, I find myself thinking that if a community had an on-site daycare program, you would be the community of choice for moms with kids to work at, right? And that it would do amazing things for residents. I listened to a podcast or a video interview that Ken Dykewald he's doing a series of interviews with people who've been in the aging field for a long time. And he was talking to a gerontologist by the name of Mark Friedman. And he was talking about a senior living community where they've got an on-site daycare or school at the community. And what they're finding is the most popular units are the ones that overlook where the kids are, because they just love that energy. And so you look at that and say, well, that's non-revenue space. It might be the best revenue space, because if you don't have enough staff, you can't fill your buildings. Article just earlier this week, it was actually, I got it from ACA, but it was actually published in an Oklahoma newspaper. Scott Pilgrim, who is a great operator, somebody I know, shut down a nursing home in a small town because he just couldn't find staff. And so it's a huge problem. So what else would you do and maybe we'll bifurcate it a little bit. We really got two staffing challenges. The first one is, how do you hold on to and make happy the people you've got? And the second one is, how do you get people to come to work? So
Sure.
yeah, take on one or the other, or you can mix them up.
Okay. Yeah, no, and they're great questions, and I think they're paramount on every operator's mind right now. And we were talking the other day, there's not a magic silver bullet. It's not a one, all we have to do is implement the strategy and all our problems are solved. It's multifaceted, it's complicated, but I think it requires an evaluation by each owner and operator as to what are we doing to our staff and for our staff. The daycare issue is a terrific idea. Maybe we should start considering sponsoring nurses from other countries, or using our communities as internship programs for local universities. But I think for existing staff, they're looking for a couple of things, and I think it's imperative we give it to them. They want ethical leadership. They want to trust the people that they work with. And this is not just me espousing. This is a Gallup poll that was conducted just pre-pandemic, but it holds true for the latest generation that are coming. So they're looking for transparency. They're looking for diversity and inclusion, and they're looking for purpose. And I think if you look at the news, you see a lot of young folks getting involved in political activism or cultural activism, and they're looking for purpose in their life. I think as an industry, we have to speak to that and demonstrate and articulate what purpose they have by working with us, the impact that they're having on the lives of not only the residents we serve, but also on their families, and how profound that is. And I think as an industry, we're getting better at it. And certainly there are some phenomenal companies out there, and some of the folks that I've worked with for decades that are really adept at this, but not everyone is. And as an industry, I don't think we can discount the effect of the pandemic on not only our recruiting efforts, because folks they saw what happened, and right or wrong, whether it was disproportionate coverage or not, we got senior housing a pretty bad rap during the course of the pandemic. I live in a place here up in the Northwest. We had the first skilled care building that really blew up because of the pandemic. And it created a lot of angst for people to come to work for us, but also a lot of angst for those that worked there. And what I'm seeing, and I've coined this term a couple of times, I don't know if anyone else has, but the post-pandemic stress disorder, PTSD, as I like to call it, because I talked to a number of executive directors who are functioning as counselors and almost therapists to some of their staff, their long-term staff, their good staff, the staff that stayed during the course of the pandemic and that worked those double shifts to cover. And some of the best people that these guys have, they're dealing with the fallout of the pandemic, with anxiety and stress, and what if it happens again, and the burnout as a result. And I think as employers, we really need to recognize that, and maybe even address it in the form of some type of counseling for those staff members, because we are seeing that burnout. And actually, there was an article just this morning, and I think it was in Fox Business, talking about the nursing shortage and how many of these nurses worked through the pandemic, and they just have gotten to the point where they need to try something else. They're leaving, and that's creating this additional shortage. And it's just, not only the labor shortage as a result of the things we've talked about, but we have to look at the effects of the pandemic on the staff that we have and make sure and getting out front. But we've already lost a good number of people as a result of that type of burnout. So I think that's one of the first things we need to do.
So I want to actually dig into this whole purpose thing a bit. One of the great puzzles to me is that we create an environment where these frontline workers, really all of us, it's not just frontline workers, but they seem to, and I think this is a problem across the board as I talk to people who are in the industry, where they get to come in and have a day-to-day direct impact on the lives of other people, of older people who are many times in their last months, last years of life. They have great wisdom. They are often funny. Mostly they were very successful in life. And so we have this opportunity to make their lives better. And if I'm a leader in senior living, I'm an executive director, a sales and marketing director, food service leader, even a department head. I have this ability to both impact residents, and I have ability to make the lives of people, the people I'm leading, better. And yet somehow it feels like leaders are doing a horrible job, and I hate to be that blunt, but leaders are doing a horrible job of actually helping the people to see the joy in what they're doing. And my experience is that most of that joy is a little thank you note, thank you, or a little note, or something you handing you a piece of candy. It's not big stuff, but it's stuff you've got to start. And know, how do we get there, or do I have it wrong?
No, no, absolutely. I think, and this goes to that recent Gallup poll, but employees want to feel valued. They want to feel respected. They want to feel that they are contributing. And I think we need to be able to communicate that to them. I was thinking the other day, it's like, what else can we do? And there was something we did a number of years ago at a couple of the buildings that I was operating, and that was to integrate the employees' personal talents and their hobbies into the building, bring them in to do whatever it is that they're good at, that they like. So if it's a musician, have them come in and perform. If it's someone that's really good with technology, have them come in and teach a class on internet for the residents and that kind of thing. And we started to kind of do that, which is really cool. The problem I got into was when I had a great staff member that was a tattoo artist, and that kind of put the kibosh on everything after we brought her in. But I mean,
Are you kidding? I think you should have gotten in there and had him do some sort of a tattoo on you. I think that would have been perfect.
well, who says I haven't, Steve?
Yeah, have you?
No.
Maybe I should get a coffee cup tattooed on my arm, or I probably not wouldn't do it on my neck or something. But
No,
yeah.
and to your point, I think we need to have very frank and honest conversations with each other. It does need to start at the upper level, and we need to ask ourselves, what are our recruiting efforts doing to emphasize well-being for our staff? What are those tangible things that we can bring? And to your point, are we articulating the impact that they're having on people's lives and on their families? Are we making that part of our recruiting process, our interview process, our onboarding process? We need to talk about during the interview process, how are we communicating the company's ethics, what we live by. And first of all, you have to start off in making sure that all of your leaders are demonstrating that. And this is why at the upper level, you need to have these conversations about whether or not your managers at the community level, regional, corporate, wherever are they communicating? Are they demonstrating that in their interactions with employees? Because if they're not, that's not your culture, because employees experience company culture by the folks that directly supervise them. So if you might have the greatest brochure and mission statement up here, but unless your managers, your leaders at every level are living that, it's not your culture. And I think that's something that's important as a leaders in the industry. We really need to come to grips with. Every one of us has those experiences of walking in and feeling that this isn't it. This isn't the culture. I wouldn't want my mom here. It's cold, or it's very opaque. It's heavy. And residents are walking by without acknowledgement by the staff and that kind of thing. I think really pushing this out to the market, to the workforce, and making sure we're living it at every level, regardless if it's a community manager, or department head, or regional, and make sure they're living that. And that's the only way you're going to make sure that you have the culture that's on your brochure, right? So the other thing I think that's pretty imperative is that knowing this new generation, we really need to take deliberate actions to ensure that the culture is being lived out at every level. We talked about integrating staff into the programming that we provide at the community level. I think that's imperative. But the staff here, our staff, the one thing that will anchor them, having known a lot of folks and seen a lot of folks, worked alongside a lot of folks, is genuine relationships, right? So installing a culture and making sure that there are deliberate actions to foster these genuine relationships between staff and family, staff and residents. I think that's the secret sauce. And those genuine relationships will anchor staff to the community. It creates a sense of trust and loyalty and, yeah, friendship and family. And those are the things that, want me to go back somewhere. I have a relationship with this person. We were just talking about Argentum. You've got friends we haven't seen in 2 years that once I want to go because they're my friends, not necessarily the event, which is always valuable, but also those relationships are what are pulling folks back. I want to reconnect with these folks. I think the same is true for our communities. We want our staff to feel that feel that tug, because they have these genuine relationships, whether it's with Mrs. Jones or her family, her daughter, or other staff members. Having a best friend at your workplace is one of the surest ways of retaining good employees.
So Adam Grant, I don't know whether he's the one who's done the original research on it, but he's talked about research that's done about how big a difference having friends at work makes to the quality of work and how people feel about the organization they work. And do you know how many friends the research shows you have to have at work in order to make this huge difference?
I don't remember.
It's one. It's just one. So if
Yep.
you can help facilitate one friendship, it will make all the difference in the world. We're actually, this is the first time I even talked about it publicly, but we are at Argentum. We're going to be talking a little bit about a text-based team building program that we're going to be releasing at a real inexpensive price. And essentially what will happen is once every 3 weeks, the person who signs up will get a very, very simple to use activity they can do for team building. You want to try one? I can give you my example. You want to try one right now?
Let's do it.
Okay, here we go. So you've probably played the game Two Truths and a Lie.
I remember it vaguely.
So you know what? So the idea with Two Truths and a Lie is you make 3 statements about yourself. 2 of them are true, 1 is a lie, and people try to figure out what the lie is. Well, this is a little variant on that. Here's how this one works. I want you to tell me something about you, something in your life that you've done that sounds like a lie, but is actually true. And I'm going to give you my example. So you have a chance to think about it while I'm telling you my example. So my example is that I once had breakfast with a presidential candidate. Sounds like a lie, but it's actually true, and I'll explain it to you here. I was in my probably late 20s. I was working actually for a senior living company in Southern California in Beverly Hills, and we were doing some financing using some tax exempt bonds. And so we were interviewing law firms. And we went to breakfast at, I think it's the Four Seasons. It was the first time I'd ever been to a real hoity-toity restaurant of any kind for breakfast. And Jerry Brown was there. This was between his first time and second time as governor. And it didn't go very far, but he was in the process of running for president. So that's my truth that sounds like a lie. So do you have one for us?
Oh, sure. So let me think here. When I was very young, a close friend of mine and I used to dress up as clowns and crash parades. So we would jump in to the band that we liked was playing the best, dressed in full clown makeup and gear, and we would just march without authority through these parades. This was in San Antonio, Texas. We had a lot of fiesta programs down there, and we were always scared that the cops were going to bounce us because they were always on the lookout for folks that didn't belong. So a couple of times we wound up dancing with the cops because the music was great and they were getting into it. So yeah, that's kind of one of my deep dark secrets.
That is awesome. That is awesome. So imagine doing that in your stand-up meeting, right? Imagine how, because you smiled when I told you my story. I smiled when you told you your story. I feel like I know you better. I'm closer, and it brings to truth. So that's what we're doing. If you're at I'm not ready to give you a URL for it yet. If you're watching, I will be talking to some people, and I have a little bit of a handout at Argent. I'm sorry, I'm stealing your time to get a little promotional time here, but anyway, so I want to spend just a couple more minutes on one other thing. We've talked mostly about holding on to the people that we have. Do you have any thoughts on how we go about recruiting better?
Yeah, I think, as an industry, we've got to get better at messaging. And I think, we've kind of gone through this 18 months of almost, negativity. Now, there are some phenomenal stories out there of folks that we call heroes in our communities that really pushed through the pandemic, that made sure and put themselves behind others. They put the families and the residents and their coworkers ahead of their themselves. These are tremendous stories, and I think as an industry, if we were to start really focusing and pushing those messages out, I think I've always thought, okay, to where we started almost, how do we make our industry more sexy? I think those stories are attractive to potential employees. Those stories they're selfless, they're courageous. These folks went above and beyond, and I think we've done a decent job at recognizing them internally, but I think we need to push those stories out and really change the perception of what our industry is about and the people that work in it. There's a lot of negative stereotypes and connotations out there when you hear about senior housing or nursing care and that kind of thing. I think we need to, as an industry, push out the positive spins, the genuine relationships, the impact that we're having, so that the next generation can see, I can have an effect here. I can have purpose and meaning in my work life. And we need to give them those tools, the staff, so that, we were talking a little bit about emotional intelligence. We love doing coaching. I love doing coaching on that because it's something that helps not only in your work life, but it helps in your personal life with every relationship you have. And these are life skills that I think we need to give to these employees. I was doing a training for about 94 nurses a few years back and asked them how many had training on emotional intelligence, and 4 people raised their hands. And I thought, isn't that weird? And how many of you ever experience emotion in your daily life? And in this business, it's every day, all day long.
That's right.
So I think we need to acknowledge that and give them those kinds of tools.
Yeah. There's no question, and it's funny you say that because I've actually got an article, it's a guest contribution that talks about this very issue of emotional intelligence. So it's really really important. I was thinking as you were talking about using stories for recruitment that it's actually one of the things the U.S. military has done very well, right? Is to talk about the adventure and the way you can make a difference in the world to recruit people. So, Mary Beth, I absolutely agree with you. I'm going to pop that up. Everyone needs to feel a genuine sense of belonging. There is no question that is true. And we want to know. I want to know that if I don't show up to work, I'm going to be missed. If I know that I'm going to be missed, I'm less likely to call off. I'm going to have a happier attitude. So I really, really believe in that. So, John, we're about out of time. You have any last words for us?
Looking forward to seeing you again soon and writing some more stuff for you. I really appreciate the time that you've given us and given to this issue. It's critical. I know it's on everyone's mind, and the more collaboration and exchange of ideas, the better off we're going to be in the long term.
Great. So I have three more questions for you. 2 of them I meant to prep you on, but I didn't. So you may want to decide you want to pass on them. But the most important one is if people want to get in touch with you, want to learn more about you, where do they find you?
Sure. So the best way is our website, havensenior.investments.com. And on that website, you'll find links to our tech branch, our consulting branch, our financial branch. So we're kind of a one-stop shop.
Perfect. So here are my last two questions. Are you reading anything interesting, in particular books, and what, if so, what? And the second question is what's your big dream for changing the world? I mean, sort of like, maybe this isn't quite right, but what do you want written on your headstone?
Oh gosh. Okay.
I should have warned you. No, and if you want to pass, right, because I put you on the spot,
No,
that's okay.
no. I'll start with the last one first because I'm always telling people this when I do trainings. Is that the reason I do these things, the reason I want to be a voice and impact this industry is not to advance my career, not even to advance the industry, but it's because I want my kids and my grandkids to be proud of what dad does. I want my kids and my grandkids just to be proud of the impact that I've had. And that's what motivates me, right? That's that deeper motivation. That's the answer that goes beyond, hey, how are you doing today? Fine. That's the top, but the bottom down here, that's my driver. What was the other question, Steve?
And are you reading anything right now that really turns you on that would be worth talking about, sharing?
Okay, honest answer. Twitter feeds don't count. Then that's not
That's
true.
right. Twitter
But
feeds don't count.
but I'm just finishing up a series on the Book of Matthew, so that's something that
That's
really
terrific.
does, isn't it? Yeah. So that's kind of where I am right now.
That's good. Because I'm a big Bible guy, and so I've got a lot of stuff I'm reading right now. But the book I'd recommend, just because I belong to a book club that Adam Grant curates, really expensive way to
Mm,
buy books. But I'm reading a book called The Extended Mind, and it's talking about
mm,
how maybe physical motion and other kinds of things outside that actually contribute to how we think about things, and that by just thinking everything happens sort of inside this little
mm,
pocket is thinking too small. So I'll be writing some
interesting.
articles about that, I'm sure. But anyway, John, thank you very much. We're way past out of time. This has been great conversation. Thank you for watching. Those of you who are going to be at Argentum next week, I can hardly wait to see you. Come look us up. And with that, we will see you again next Friday. Next Friday, we have an operator coming on who's stayed at 90% occupancy throughout the whole pandemic, and 20 some buildings. So not a small operation. So I'm looking forward to that, and I hope you'll be with us. So with that, I'm going to sign off.
Thank you.